Hello. Hi, everybody. I can't see you, but I know you're all there. It's lovely to not quite see you at the Queen Elizabeth Hall. My name is Miranda Sawyer, and today I am fantastically excited to talk to a literary superstar, a man whose brilliant writing and larger-than-life characters smashed their way out of the world of books to define a generation, whose words have become both a mantra sampled on house tracks and the basis of one of the most successful British films ever made. Returning once again to his central Trainspotting characters of Renton, Sick Boy, Spud and Begbie, yes, come on. With his fantastic new book, Men in Love, please welcome on stage a man who will always choose life, Mr. Irvine Welsh. Okay, there it is, Irvine, your beautiful new book, Men in Love, and you do return to the characters that we love, Renton, Sick Boy, Spud and Begbie, as well as some other familiar characters. Second prize is in there, Ali, Maria, Seeker. The book is set almost immediately after the end of Trainspotting, which, as we all remember, is when Renton rips his friends off for £16,000 and escapes. You've returned to these core characters quite a lot. There's different books that you've done: Porno, Blade Artist, Dead Man's Trousers, Scout Boys. Why go back to them again, and why this particular moment?
Yeah, I don't really know, because you never know why you write a book, really. I don't really know this, but I'm aware that there has to be some kind of thing that piques your interest, and I think that because we're in such a negative time in terms of what's going on in the world, that it was nice to think about love, basically, because that's the one thing that everybody sort of feels or aspires to or wants in their life, or kind of tries to get in their life, or tries to hold on to if they have it, or maintain it, or look after it, or nurture it. And it's a kind of universal positive that we have, and everything seems now to be about kind of, hatred and antagonism and destruction and control and greed and all these negative things. And I just think that I'm trying to make sense of all this. You're always trying to make sense of everything as a novelist, and I'm thinking, like, why am I trying to, what is the counterbalancing force, basically? And it is our aspiration to be with each other, and to be romantically involved, and to look after each other, and to kind of build a smaller community that's part of a bigger community. And there's a very redemptive kind of power in love. So I wanted to write about, but the downside of that is that, traditionally, not so much now, but traditionally, people were forced to make these big decisions about love and romance in their 20s.
Yeah.
When often you know absolutely fuck all, basically. Yeah. Speaking about myself, here, that you're not in a position to make these kind of big choices. The idea that, will we get together? Will we move in together? Will we get married? Will we have kids? Will we both have a career? Will one of us have a career? Will none of us? Will we travel? Will we buy a house? Will we, all these mad things that people have to think about. And when they're 25,
yeah.
Jesus Christ, it's
and
nuts.
And they make the decision on the basis of, like, did they have a nice time in bed or not?
Yeah, and or as do we get on with each other's families, or something kind of crazy like that, So yeah, it's so I thought, I know how useless I was at that time in my life, and I'm thinking about who's even more useless than me, who would be interesting to put in this position, So I thought about these guys, and I had a lot of stuff on them from that time, because I never really stopped writing about them. They're like the Trainspotting characters and the Glue characters are my sort of go-to to try and understand the world. And I pressed on with, I took all this stuff out, these little notes and sketches and little short stories that I had, and I thought, Well, there's a lot of love and romance, or aspirations towards love and romance here. So just go with that.
And when you're writing, so it sounds like you're constantly writing. Are you constantly writing about these characters anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I have the you know, I mean, I'm always writing kind of film and TV stuff, and maybe sometimes stage stuff as well, and music too. And I have this. I kind of have them as my go-to characters, or if I have a sketch, if I'm doing something that doesn't quite fit into what I'm writing, I'll take it away and I'll write about them. And I've been doing this for years and years and years. So I do have a folder that builds up kind of stuff on them, and I think, let's go back to these guys again and see what they're up to at this point in time.
It's like a Marvel universe, but just
but
skagheads.
I'm the worst franchise builder in the world. You're supposed to do these things sequentially, you know, in time and all that. And I just think, all right, I'm not interested in writing about them just after Trainspotting. Let's have them 20 years ahead, you know, and then thinking, well, now I'm interested in writing them just after Trainspotting, you know. So it's... You never really know. I mean, my next novel that's coming out next year is about, it's a multi-generational family saga set in Las Vegas, and not even the Strip in Las Vegas, a suburb in Las Vegas. So all different new characters. So I never really know what I'm going to do until something kind of nags at me and I get to critical mass. There's no real scheming involved here, you know, which is a bit stupid, really. You know, you should have some kind of a plan, like
scheme.
You make more money if you write things in sequence and build a franchise, like, you know.
Well, once you've got them, now you've got them, you can just reissue them in like with the same.
That's what I should do.
Covers.
I should kind of everybody's span of attention has been wiped by the internet. Anyway, I could just tell them that. Well, actually, Sky Boys was published before Trainspotting, and then Men in Love was before porno and all that. You know.
So it sounds like you are writing all the time, and obviously you've got lots of different kind of. You know, you write music, you write theatre, you write telly, you write film, you write lots of different things. When is the kind of critical point where you think, okay, this is it, I'm definitely going to write a book? Is it like you've got a great scene, or is it, when do you know?
It can be a sort of a variety of things. Sometimes it's like you have this idea of a character that kind of it pops into your head, and you're thinking about them, and you're thinking about who they are and what they're doing and what they're listening to and what their backstory is, and you know what their kind of dramatic needs are in terms of story. Sometimes it can be a theme. Sometimes it's like, you know, you think, I want to write about romance, basically, you know, and then you get the characters after that. You know? And other times it can just be like a plotted thing that comes into your head, you know, that a story actually comes into your head. Well, you know, this person meets that person, they do this, and this happens, and then the outcome is, you know, so it can be theme, it can be character, or it can be story. Okay.
So the theme is, and the title is, Men in Love, right? So to me, that sounds quite romantic. I'm here to say, this book isn't that romantic.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it is. I think it is in a way, yeah.
Okay, but our heroes, they have like differing versions of love, and the book ends on their own definitions of it, really.
Yes.
So this is my summary of it, and you can like attack me for it. But like Spud is essentially kind of hopelessly sappy about love, and Begbie doesn't really love anyone except maybe Rod Stewart, but not in that way. And it's Sick Boy and Renton that are kind of more nuanced about it. And a lot of the book kind of concentrates on Sick Boy's romance, particularly.
Yeah, I mean, it's that thing, they're mentored by this merchant seaman at the start of it, who's kind of, they're fascinated by this kind of libertine seaman character, you know, who's kind of...
called Eddie Reese.
Eddie Reese, who kind of sails the seven seas as a merchant seaman. He has relationships everywhere. And he says to them, you know, that you have to decide whether you're a lover or a shagger. And that's basically, they've kind of, he's almost put this curse on them, you know, because Renton becomes this kind of club promoter, and he's got... and he's got all these events, and he kind of just wants to shag around, basically. You know, he's got all these opportunities, but he has this romantic cast to him, so that kind of, it sabotages him as a shagger, and he gets all kind of inappropriately involved in love affairs with people maybe he shouldn't be kind of having a sort of love affairs with. Sick Boy's the reverse. He's a shagger, and he thinks he aspires to social mobility and kind of marrying a rich woman to get into this kind of status, but he's so involved in the game of seduction that he can't really stop himself. That's where he's really at, and he doesn't quite realise that, and that's his sort of tragedy, basically. But they've both kind of been cursed by this ancient mariner, really.
Yeah, and also there's a point as well where what he says about, this is all at the very, very beginning of the book, and what he says to and about Renton and Sick Boy is that he says, you'll be miserable if you stay here, you're wanderers, you have to get out. And that is like that saves them, really, doesn't it? They get out of Leith in a way that, say, Spud and Begbie find it really hard to get out.
Yeah, I mean, Begbie finds it hard enough to get out of Stockton prison, so he's not really kind of... even being in Leith, the streets of Leith for any length of time would be a result for him, like, you know. But it's that kind of thing that... I mean, I notice that it's a kind of, you know, it's a Scottish thing in a way. It's a bit like... not as extreme as Ireland as an immigration place, but it is a place that... I mean, Scotland's been economically depressed for decades and decades and decades, and it's never it's never really had a boom time under the Union, you know, since the Union of the Crowns in a lot of ways, so it's people have left, basically. You know, they've left to go to Australia and Canada and to the southern states of America back in the day, and they've left to go to England. And I notice that, you know, with your mates that grow up, there's a kind of different mentality between the people that stay and the people that go, you know, and it's like, you know, the thing is that as soon as you leave your hometown, you're kind of your romantic options open up as well as your economic ones, basically, because you're meeting people from all different places and all different backgrounds, and you're seeing the world in a different way, you know. And it's like, but you know, you're back in Leith, you know. It's like if you meet someone from a different street, I was going to say someone from a different household, you know, as a result, like, you know, but I'm being facetious there. If there's any hometowners, like, please don't feed this back, basically, like, you know. But if you meet, you know, you basically kind of people that you go to school with, that, you know, 2 or 3 years above or 2 or 3 years below you basically know who everybody is, you know, you know their brothers or their cousins or their relatives and all that, and it's a kind of, it's quite an incestuous sort of thing, you know. I mean, I kind of go back home and you see some of your pals saying, oh, I got married to so-and-so who used to be with such and such back in the day and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, thank fuck I'm out of this, like, you know. But, you know, and I think I'm so glad that I kind of first left Edinburgh in my teens. And, you know, I came back in my sort of my mid-20s. But I left there in my teens to my mid-20s. And it's like... I missed out that period where you kind of become a little bit, or you can become a bit ossified in your community and in your society and all that. But I think that, you know, and again, a lot of people that I know, you know, they have brilliant relationships and they've really made that sort of, they've really made a kind of great thing out of that. It wouldn't be for me. I couldn't really envisage any sort of. Any world for me where I'd be with someone from, you know, I couldn't see myself ever marrying my childhood sweetheart type of thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Okay. So look, the really the central relationship. I mean, Renton has a kind of particular relationship, which we can unpick in a bit. But really, the central relationship, almost like the driving force of the book, is Sick Boy's relationship with a woman called Amanda. And she is posher than him, and he meets her at a particular point. Do you want to? We're going to do a reading, and this is about this meeting, isn't it?
Yeah, basically what he does is he goes to, he stalks posh women in London to try and get off with them and kind of ingratiate himself to them. And where he meets them is in rehab groups in kind of nice parts of the town. So this is one, and he goes to Highgate basically to this one. So he's gone to nice parts of the town. He knows that that women who are it's a well I'll explain it in his voice basically.
Yeah.
The man, in his mid-20s and a stranger to the group, rises from his chair of tubular black metal and moulded red plastic, his bearing strong and confident. Unlike most of the others in the functional room of this North London community centre, located in a nondescript back street of a main shopping thoroughfare, he is persuasively dressed, sporting a long Burberry overcoat. His hair is cut in mod revivalist fashion with hooked pseudo-sideboards. Strip lights above dazzle a magnesium flare on the leather uppers of his Italian shoes, handmade by a Milanese cobbler in Shoreditch. His eyes, a fiery blaze of luminous sepia, stand out in the sea of dulled trepidation around him. Perhaps the only clue of any residual trauma lies in a faint shading beneath him and the gauntness of his pallid face. As all eyes fall on him, he lets the silence hang, picks his moment. "My name is Simon David Williamson, and I'm a drug addict," he announces in strident authority. From the 8 other occupants, the respondent chorus, "Welcome, Simon," ranging from grudged mumbles to enthusiastic salutations, bubbles through the room. "There, got your attention." Williamson tosses his head back. That keeps us in the comfortable world of absolutes. Sobriety is essential. Intoxication is the devil's work. Philip Carter, a skinny, angular man in faded jeans and grey polo-neck sweater, scrunches his features in disbelief. Chairing such groups means attesting to all sorts of evinced behaviours. This, disturbingly, hints at something new. The only problem being is it's absolute bullshit. Williamson thrusts his jaw forward. Most people are here because, let's face it, he looks around the perplexed faces in pitying contempt. They're either mentally ill or somebody, some butt-fucking stepfather or uncle, has made them that way. Drug abuse, just a manifestation of this. His words set off gasps of shock, bemusement and scorn. One burly, shaven-headed man springs up, pointing at him, declaring to the cheers and applause of others, "You don't know nothing about my life! Don't tell me about my life!" Simon David Williamson sits in calm defiance, chin visibly extending further. "You're telling me all I need to know right now." The skinhead takes a step forward. "Who are you, you fucking cunt?" He's restrained by another man who fastens a grip on his wrist. "Don't rise to his bite, mate." "Thank you, Len. Mickey." Philip Carter weighs him down, urging calm. Perhaps embarrassed by his loss of control in contrast to Williamson's demeanour of sharkishly cool satisfaction, Mickey, the skinhead, complies, lowering himself back into his seat, settling for training a malevolent gaze on his antagonist. Carter pauses to let the heat leak from the faces around him. Then he addresses Simon David Williamson. "Well, Simon, seeing as you have it all figured out, why are you here?" Simon David Williamson, known as Sick Boy in his hometown of Leith, Edinburgh, Scotland, glances at the blonde-haired girl opposite him in the semicircle, the one he'd seen in the street earlier and had followed into this hall. After her golden mop had demanded a second glance, the lacy gloves she wore had further intrigued him. The next hook was her unbowed, upright posture as she moved in an untroubled glide through that door, a dramatic contrast to the hunched, furtive, beaten look normally evidenced at such venues. For this was Sick Boy's modus operandi, hanging around rehab group meetings, waiting till he saw a desirable woman go into one. The woman, early 20s, around 5'6", with dark, hypnotic eyes, regards him with interest. She is dressed in what he judges as a combination of expensive boutique, high street chain, and second-hand store chic, but blended with the athlete's care. Yes, he has her attention. Time to show his human side and dispense what they crave. Forgive my presumption, Sick Boy begins in suddenly penitent tones. I've had my issues with drugs. He corrects himself. My issues with drugs. And lowers his head, shaking it slowly. When he lifts it to reveal his gaze again, his eyes are wide and moist. I've found it hard to accept because there seems to be no reason. He slams his fist into his palm. I mean, neither of my siblings touch drugs. I've never been abused or mental health issues or any other trauma. Why me? He pleads. Thank you.
Okay, I've realised that before that we carry on, I should have mentioned there will be time for you to all ask questions. So think of some questions. It'll be in about like half an hour. So look, Sick Boy. Sick Boy's love affair with the woman that he meets at rehab, Amanda. He is a very interesting character, and it's very explored in this book, isn't it? He's like arrogant, he's charming, he's funny, he's pretty much amoral when it comes to women. Someone actually, I was reading reviews of various books of yours, and someone described him as a damned soul. I would say he's kind of cheekier than that. In this book, which follows his love affair and actually ends up with his wedding, which is a brilliant set piece, he isn't able, despite the fact that he does seem to be in love, he isn't able to be monogamous, he isn't able to stop lying. He isn't able to stop being Sick Boy, despite the fact that he thinks that he loves Amanda.
Yeah, I think in some ways he probably does, but he kind of loves himself even more. And he's kind of like, it's interesting because the book's set in the late 80s, you know, it's like it's set before this horrible thing, the mobile phone and the internet, that's kind of made us all into kind of drilling, kind of sort of daft, kind of sort of sex-lusting Nazi virgins, basically, like, you know. Thank you, Bill Gates. But you know, so it's, you know, what happens is that people can't really behave like he does now because, you know, there's consequences. And I think one of the reasons that we kind of slavishly sort of, kind of like a lot of people kind of stupidly and slavishly idolize billionaires is because they can act without consequences still. You know, they've got all these cheerleaders that can invent these ridiculous fictions about them. So basically, it's the sick boys that kind of rule the world now, basically, you know what I mean? Because, you know, and I think the empowerment of that character is that he's an ordinary guy who does act without consequences, or he can ride out and manipulate the consequences to his own end, you know, which we can't, most of us can't do anything like that now in any aspect of our life. We're all kind of depowered. The very, very mega rich people can do that, but it's at the expense of the disempowerment of the rest of us. So I think that's why he's an interesting figure, because he shows that he has that aspiration that a lot of working class people have is to have that kind of freedom. You know, that there was you know it's that big football chant that started in the millennium that went around, like, you know, he does what he likes, he does what he likes. You know, it's like a great kind of thing of freedom. And the reason people chant that is because they know they can't do what they like. You know,
Yeah.
we're increasingly confined by the world that we're in. We're confined by an internet which is like a kind of Kafkaesque bureaucracy now. You know, it's asking stuff of us. It's not kind of it's not our gateway to freedom, our gateway to knowledge now. It's a sort of control mechanism, basically, of the corporations and the state. So, you know, I think the beauty of writing a book that's a historical kind of piece of fiction now, in a way, is that you can have characters acting in a freer way. You know, and it's funny when I talk to younger people about this book, you know, some of them are going like, oh, that's terrible, people behaving like that. It's so great that we've learned to make these proper rules and we can look and police each other and we can kind of, you know, we can... And other ones are going, fuck, it must have been great to be around then, like, you know. So, yeah, so it's kind of, it's an interesting time we live in, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, the as a reader, when you read, like, especially characters like Sick Boy and Begbie, like, there's bits of them that are just, horrible. You know, Begbie's involved in terrible violence throughout the whole of the book. But he's really funny. And the same with Sick Boy. Sick Boy treats people terribly, but it's also really funny. There's a particular scene, which I'm not going to completely unpick, but there's a scene, Sick Boy is working in the porn industry, and there's this particular scene involving porn film and anal sex, which is simultaneously really horrible, really awful, and really funny. And I kind of wondered why, you know, when you include those scenes, what are you trying to kind of provoke in the reader?
I think, you know, you try and, I mean, what I try to do is when I'm writing characters, I want to get a reaction from myself. So I want the characters to both, I want them to affirm me in my kind of existence and where I come from and all the kind of culture that I'm from. But I want them to annoy the fuck out of me as well. You know, I want to really sort of react against them. So I'm looking for affirmation on one side. I'm looking to have a laugh with them and all that and to join in their kind of banter. But I'm looking to be repelled and to be kind of horrified and challenged by them as well, you know. So I think I need to have these two things playing off against each other, you know. Yeah. I can't have one thing or the other thing. And I write in a purely selfish way to get a reaction from myself. You know, I don't have any notion of an audience at all or a readership at all. And it is, you know, I think that, and I think, you know, I think we're all pretty much the same in a lot of ways. You know, we all react to the same things, and some of us are more comfortable about expressing it than others and all that. But and some pleasures are guilty pleasures, other ones we feel happy about kind of claiming. So I think, you know, I think that basically I'm just an average guy that's writing for average people, basically. Like, you know, I think we're all pretty much kind of average, you know, and So that's the way I kind of write, without a notional audience, like an audience of one. You can't, when you write for TV and film, it's a completely different thing. You know, they're hitting you with which demographic is it, which can, you know, which
also,
age,
you just couldn't put that scene on in the film.
No, you can't. Unfortunately, you can't do that. Like, you know, they're kind of. But it's, you know, there's certain things that operate better in literature, and there's certain things that operate better in film. You don't want to. There's certain things you can't really show. Sort of, you don't really want to show on film, because in literature people have got that power over the book. They're making the film in their own head, you know. So if you get to a point that it gets really kind of dark and bleak, you just put it down. You have a little kind of laugh about it, or you play some kind of bunnies, puppies and kittens dancing through your head and all that. Then you go back to it, kind of refresh. You can't do that when you're sitting in a cinema, you know. No. You're just getting these images bombarded at you. So I think it's cinema and TV are they're made for an audience rather than for an individual reader who has the power. The reader's making the film in their own head, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting. The end of the book, there's a disclaimer which is which is put in, which is basically, I'm going to say it really quickly, which is many of the characters express themselves in ways that we now consider offensive and discriminatory. This is not an endorsement or even a condemnation of such behaviours. Did you ever include these before? I seem to remember something like that from Marabou Stalk Nightmares. Did you ever?
No, it's a publishing thing, and it's like well, I mean, I think in the world today, we have to you have to accept that publishers want to sell books. That's what they want to do. And now the way the audience, particularly an online audience, reacts to these things is kind of very, very different. And the internet decontextualizes everything, to the point that somebody could just take a comment out of that book, stick it online, and say something like, this is what he thinks, cancel him and all that, Now, anybody with any intelligence at all, would think, well, that's one of the characters in the book that have said that. But people's intelligence tends to be compromised if they spend a lot of time online, because they're operating in that they're operating in a very decontextual world where they're just, they're just hearing this, they're reacting to this thing, they're getting this dopamine kind of charge and they're piling on and all that, So, to me, I think personally, I think these kind of things are unnecessary because I think that the contextualization is provided by the fact that it is a novel, it is a work of fiction, and it's also an 80s novel, so you have to operate in that way. And I think when you start doing things like that, you start making a compromise to the dumbed down nature of the world and to the silliness of the internet. And I think that's going to be the big revolution, is that people are going to start seeing, and I think they do already, they see people that are kind of posting on the internet anonymously and trolling and piling on and organising pile-ons and all that. It's people that are a bit sad and lacking, and it's not really part of the discourse. And part of the discourse is experiential learning, and it's about talking to people in the real world, and having ideas play out and having the consequentialism of these ideas playing out in the real world. So that's so I think I actually believe that we're moving towards that. We're moving away from the internet as this kind of, I think we'll be more judicious about it. I think we'll start to use it more as a tool, You see people now at concerts, instead of just gaping like that, other people are shouting them down and saying, look, fuck off, nobody's going to watch this shit anyway that you're putting up online. Like, just watch the gig, enjoy the gig, Yeah, experience the gig.
Yeah. So Begbie is in this book, right? I have to say, I really love Begbie as a character. He's just amazing. I mean, obviously, he's incredibly violent, but he is really funny. And there's a point where he comes down. Essentially, I'm not, spoiling the book. He is Sick Boy's best man at this really posh wedding. That is like an amazing set piece, which you must have just thought, right, this is a joy. I'm going to have the poshest wedding in the world, and I'm going to introduce Begbie and Spud.
And they hate each other as well.
And they hate each other. It's so good.
I think that, I think there's a scene, my favourite scenes in the book is when Sick Boy goes to visit him in prison. And he's been called in, and you basically get one guy's view of the other guy. And then he's, and he sort of, he comes out with this kind of hateful vengeance towards Sick Boy, and Sick Boy disarms him completely by deciding that he's going to be his best man, so it's
And the wedding is an amazing kind of set piece, isn't it? I mean, when you thought of that, that is quite filmic. That's that part of the book, which we end up at. I don't want to kind of spoil it for you, but it's very funny.
It's quite a long, kind of involved wedding.
Very involved.
A lot of bad things, a lot of strange things happen.
Yeah. So you must, to me, that felt like a very enjoyable thing to come up with and write. And
weddings are great fun anyway, and weddings are what we like about weddings is that they throw a lot of people, some of whom know each other very, very well, and other people who don't know each other as well, you know. So as the kind of the things, the activities kind of wear on and drink begins to flow and people start to coalesce and all that, you've got all these strange things start to occur. You know, so weddings are great and they're very dramatic and they're incredibly brilliant things to write because everybody's hypercharged anyway.
Yeah.
That drama just has to happen, basically.
Yeah, and quite a lot does happen. Renton is in a particular position in this book, isn't he? In that a lot of people are looking for him because they're really pissed off with him because he went off with the money. But he's very separate. He's in Amsterdam. And there's a point where you have, as you've said, he's like in inverted commas, he's been cursed with being the lover. But it feels to me that he makes a decision during this book that actually one of his loves is work. Like he decides that he wants to be a promoter, he works really hard and he loses his love life because he becomes in love with work.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about him is that he's run away, you know, he's made this decision to run away with the money and he's alienated. He can't go back to his community. He's lost not only his friends, he's lost his family, he's lost his community. And I think when you do that, when you make a decision to turn your back on something like that, you actually become closer to it in some ways than ever because it becomes more present in your life because every single day of your life that decision manifests, the ramifications of that decision manifest. So he's feeling that he's lost so much in doing that as well, you know, and he's trying to replace it. He's trying to replace it with relationships. He's trying to replace it with these, like so many people when. At that time that I'm writing about in the kind of late 80s when acid house and ecstasy kind of went crazy, people started to leave their traditional communities and build their own community of like-minded souls kind of from up and down the country, basically. You know, I mean, I know that I started going all over the place to rave, you know, I started going to Back to Basics and Republic and the Hacienda and anywhere where there was a big kind of rave on, I'd be, and you met all the same faces from all over the country, basically, and it was a great time. So you had this kind of almost like this two-tier community. You had where you came from and where you had this on top, you know. So with him, he's lost where he came from, so what he's got on top becomes, you know, Acid House basically and Clubland becomes his new community, becomes his family.
Yeah. Which brings us to something that you have done with this book, which is you've made an album that goes with this book, kind of goes with this book. It's you and the Sci-Fi Soul Orchestra. We're going to play a little bit because when I heard that you'd made this album, you sent me this album, and I was like, I don't know what I thought. I think I thought it would be quite spiky. It would be not what I expected. What I would describe this is as kind of, it's like Philly soul meets Chicago house. It's really warm. It's really great. We've got a bit of it. Should we hear a bit? I feel like we should. Like we'll hear a little bit of it, and then I'm going to get Irvine to talk about it. Okay, this one's called "You've Got to Be Strong." Should we do some dance? Arms aloft, isn't it?
Hook coming up.
Okay. So you can see what I mean, right? That's proper good old-fashioned house. Come on, Irvine. So how did that come about?
Basically, my music partner, Steve, who's Steve Max, legendary techno producer, we've had this kind of, with Carl Loban, we've had this little kind of techno act going, kind of dipping under the radar for a few years, putting on gigs, and then we got a chance to do the Trainspotting musical, to write songs for the Trainspotting musical, and we wrote them in all sorts of genres.
Yeah.
And the one that we really enjoyed doing, well, we enjoyed doing them all, like, but we enjoyed, because we wrote country and blues and jazz and kind of, as well as like acid and sort of punk and techno, the things that you kind of expect. But we wrote this kind of chic type kind of, but basically a chic kind of rip-off, basically, a kind of Nile Rodgers, Bernard Edwards type sort of number. And Can
I just ask, what point in Trainspotting were you illustrating with that number?
Well, I think you look, when you're doing something for a musical for stage, you're looking at all the songs that they would be hearing, basically, coming right through, from the 70s, kind of right through into the early 90s, the one that was just so joyful was just doing this disco. So we talked about doing a disco album, and we thought that it's one of these they say about houses like disco on a budget, basically, because you can't, you can do everything with in a studio, but to get the power of strings and horns and all that kind of stuff, you've really got to work hard. And we started this record label about 3 years ago, and one of the artists on the record label, Scott, is a multi-talented musician, and he's just fabulous. And so we basically built up the album with Scott, and I thought, well, the lyrics that I was kind of coming out with and writing with it, and the sort of things that were kind of clicking around in my head in terms of sort of harmonies, it was all about these characters, because I was writing these characters, and it's quite a nice thing to do, because the book is quite hardcore in a lot of ways, and the music shows you a kind of a different side to them. Basically, it shows you because music is that thing that literature is great for telling stories, but for emotion, music's on a completely different level. I mean, literature is explaining the world that we're in. Music's telling us about worlds we don't really know, but are kind of universal to us. And I compare it to a bit like, I've used this analogy too many times now, so apologies if you've read it in one of the papers, but it's a bit like tiling a bathroom, and you put your big kind of literary tiles down, but it still can look a bit shit unless you get the grout in there, and the grout is the music that gets into all these places that we can't really get to. So that was it, so they're hopefully the book and the album are complementary, you sort of, but obviously as a standalone, I think that we were quite shocked by how good the album is, basically. It's like, I mean, I'm not kind of putting us down, or Steve or Scott and all that, but it just come out so fucking good, basically, and
is there an idea so the song that we played is called You've Got to Be Strong, and to me, when I heard it, so in the book, Spud is in a relationship with Ali. Spud is incredibly kind of devoted to Ali, almost like too much like a puppy dog.
Yeah.
And this particular song seemed like it was her telling him to kind of, in inverted commas, man up a bit.
Yeah. I think it's like, and again, that that tends to happen a lot. Two people get together, there's a kind of, there's a dopamine smash for a few months, and they're all like, and then you think, how do we actually get a relationship out of this? How do we actually progress this? And it's usually the woman that has that kind of practical sense of things, like, it's like, shape up now, and I think, so I think that's, that's what she's saying to him. She's saying that romance is great, and love, that kind of side of love is great, but there's a side of love that is about showing up and actually really seeing who the other person is, basically, you know, and being there for them in spite of everything, and allowing them to be there for you, and allowing yourself not to present as this cartoon character, but to kind of be, you know, presenting as a real person in reality to how you are emotionally and how what you are in terms of your experience of life. So I think that that's what you know, the song's kind of sort of trying to say, you know, and it's quite. I think she's a bit hard on him in the book in a lot of ways.
Everyone's hard on Spud, though, aren't they?
But he's hard on himself as well. And I think when if you're too hard on yourself, other people will join in the pile on, basically.
Yeah, that's very true. When you're writing, I seem to remember a really long time ago that you told me that you wrote on the circle line. Is that right?
Yes, I did. But when
the circle line doesn't go all the way around anymore.
When the circle line used to go all the way around, like, and then they kind of the circle line. I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember, but the circle line used to be a circle line, you know, and then they started fanning around with it and kind of. I think it's not at Paddington. It's what is it? Baker Street.
You can't do it
Edgware
anymore.
Edgware Road. They fucked it up at Edgware Road. So you can't just. You have to kind of get off and change at Edgware Road if you want to go right round. But you used to be able to just go right round in the circle line and kind of twice. You know, you had a good 2-hour shift in, basically. Like, you know, you kind of. And that was your morning, and all the physical descriptions of the characters in the early books were people on the circle line, basically. You know, I'd be sitting there, kind of, you know, and people would be looking at me, going, "Why are you, examining my articles of clothing and all that?" You know, it was like.
Well, no, the circle line isn't there. Because I think a lot of people would think, oh, that's quite noisy. There's a lot of people. Where do you like to write now?
I love noise and chaos for the first draft because you're getting all the smells and sounds and kind of people. You know, you're just getting kind of you're getting life. You know, I like it to feel like it's a lot of novels that. I mean, you know, there's a lot of kind of great writers around, but some novels feel like they've been written with the writer wearing rubber gloves. Everything seems to be kind of quite sanitized and formulaic. I like it to be quite vulgar and testy and sort of noisy and kind of, you know, disruptive and all that. And then from a kind of order to sort of come out of that, basically. You know?
Yeah. So where would you go now then? Would you sit in a
everywhere?
cafe?
You know, usually cafes. Like, you know, sometimes I can't. Sometimes, you know, when I'm on, if I'm on they used to call it the North London line. It's the Mildmay line now. But if I'm on the Mildmay line or the Northern line, and if I'm, you know, sitting in a cafe, or a lot of it's in airports now, you know. So I'm constantly just in trains as well. I'm up on that train between Edinburgh and London all the time. So, and that's great because that's 4.5 hours. You know, you just sit there and you just work for 4.5 hours. Like, you know, you can't. The reception's so crap. You can't get involved in emails and stuff like that. And so so it's fabulous. I love sitting on that train.
And we mentioned a little bit before about you working, you know, obviously the crime novels were you adapted them for telly and you've written a musical and stuff like that. How do those things play with each other? Are there some topics that you think, okay, this is definitely telly, this is definitely, it's a different form, isn't it? Yeah, I think there's some things that you have an idea for something and you kind of, like the novel that I've got coming out next year, this Vegas one I was telling you about, I wrote this and I handed it into, I wrote it a few years ago and I handed it into my then editor and he said, this is actually quite shit, basically. Like, you know. And I was quite, you know, you're obviously quite hurt at the time and I was kind of thinking, well, it is actually quite shit, but there's something good in it, and I don't know what it is. It's not, you know, there's something about it that feels wrong, you know. And then I realised that what this is actually a TV series. You know, it's you know, it kind of feels more like a TV series pushed into a novelistic form, you know. So I got in touch with a producer friend and gave it to her, and she was saying, "This is fabulous."
You know, I want to option this for a show. So the thing got optioned for TV before it was published as a novel, and it gave. Working with the person who was adapting it, with the people who were adapting it in the writers' room, I started to see where it wasn't working as a novel and what I had to do to make it work. So I basically I got away to Miami for the first 3 months in the year, and I just went there to my little pad in Miami and just started writing, started to rewrite the novel and to work out what it actually was and how it would work novelistically. And now it feels really good. It feels a really kind of strong, realised piece of work.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, and you mentioned the musical. When is that happening?
We're still looking for a theatre, so if anybody's got a theatre to spare, but our needs are quite specific. It can't be more than 1,400, but it can't be less than 900, yeah?
That is quite specific.
Yeah, we are, you know.
Maybe you should stage it here. Isn't this like 1,000?
This is about 1,000. Yeah, we can maybe get away with doing it here, yeah.
Yeah, I think we could do it, definitely. Okay, I'm going to... can we have some of the house lights on this incredibly good-looking audience? There you all are. Hi. It is time for audience questions. If you have any questions, we've got some nice people with some microphones. There you are. Hello.
And as they say, don't be shy, your mother wasn't.
Okay, do we have questions? There's a question here, I see. That lady there. There's one there, and the lady behind as well.
Hey, Irvine. Congratulations on the new novel.
Thank you.
Obviously, the Trainspotting movie, the actors that played the characters perfectly realised. I was wondering, since you've written about those characters since the movie, do you visualise the actors in your head when you write about them, or you manage to separate them?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it takes a while because you when you write a book, you don't want to look at it again. But you don't mind kind of looking at a movie, you've probably seen the film many more times than I've read the books, it used to be quite easy when the characters were quite vivid in my head. It's become a bit more difficult now. It's become very difficult now with Begbie because I'm actually working with Robert Carlyle now on the TV adaptation of The Blade Artist. And it's funny because Begbie, I always thought Begbie was quite a kind of chunky, powerful presence in the book. And Bobby was this kind of really kind of whippet thin kind of wee cycle basically. Now Bobby, as people do with age, is chunkier and more solid. And he's more like the Begbie that I kind of imagined. So it's kind of
grown into Begbie.
Yeah, he's grown into that role, basically. So it's more difficult now, basically, because they've taken over. These characters have become so iconic in posters and everywhere. So you can't get away from them. So they have taken over a little bit, and I have to which is annoying because it means I have to go back to the books, to the original descriptions.
To remember them, that Rents has actually got red hair.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, there was a lady just behind, actually. Have you still got the microphone? Oh, no, it's there. So I was going to say just pass it over the top, but I will come over to this side next.
Hiya. You've recently been involved in supporting the campaigns to maintain the museums of working class history in Edinburgh in the High Street, and wondered if you could comment on how maintaining working class struggle and history is complementary to the books that you write.
Well, I mean, I think that, we hear a lot about diversity, and we hear a lot about like everybody being represented. And I mean, Edinburgh has always been a working class city primarily, as all cities are. They're about the places where people come to work. And it's like you wouldn't, if you went into the town and you seen everything is now, like all cities, it's all designed for students and for business travellers and tourists and festival goers. And, you think that the people that actually live there are kind of relegated to the fringes. And when you look at, and when you start to do that, when you start to marginalise people economically, socially in that way, you start to write them out of history. So I think it's important that the history of a city is really the history of its working people. So to have something, to shut down something like that, to me, and the museum is called the People's Story Museum in the High Street. And my friend Jim Slavin was involved in a campaign to stop it from being closed. And I think if you lose touch with that, and you lose touch with the essence of what a city's about, then you've really lost touch with everything. I mean, and the internet is imposing almost like a post-cultural age on us, where we're just we're not really encouraged to argue and debate and discuss anything that's relevant. We're kind of basically there to be farmed for our experiences and to be given instruction. So I think it's more important than ever that we maintain these tangible spaces that are sort of that are a monument to what people have actually done in their lives and what they've actually done by standing together and struggling together.
Very good. That's good. Hello, have we got any more questions? I'm looking over this side. Come on this side. You must have questions. Hello, you've got it.
Hi. Yeah.
Mike.
Irvine, with the music that you've done, is there any plans to take that on tour? So any kind of DJ nights planned or any?
Are you going to be doing some dancing? Formation dancing as well?
We're off to, just after this, we're going to launch the album up at the Camden Eye. And I think Carol and Steve are going to head to get on the decks first. And we're going to be, we'll play some of the album, we'll play some of the remixes, which are really good. And the kind of the extended house remixes of the album tracks, and I'll come along later on after I've done the signing and get on the decks with them, and then I'm on tour straight away, and I don't think we're doing anything in Oxford or Bristol Monday and Tuesday night, but in Liverpool after the Every Man Theatre show, I'll be DJing with Pete Hooton from the Farm in a nightclub in Liverpool, the Arts Bar across the road. And then when we do the show in Edinburgh, we're going to launch the album, not in Edinburgh but in Leith. We're going downhill to into the Arches in Leith to my pals organised a Do For a Sense. We'll be kind of again DJing and signing albums and stuff. And again, the same in Glasgow on Friday night at the SW3 G Club, and so again, a similar thing, and then back down, and then I think we go to Latitude on the Sunday, and we do a thing there. So we do, and there'll be intermittently for the rest of the year after that.
Yeah, you could just do PAs at various clubs. Yeah.
I know. It's funny because I did a big club tour in Italy, and we were kind of promoting the last book, Resolution, during the early evening, and then we're doing the kind of club night after it, and it is two discrete audiences in a lot of ways. It's like there's. I did this, I think it was in Bologna, I did this sort of reading in the nightclub, and the decks were behind this, on the stage were behind this curtain, and it was crazy because we pulled away the curtain, and half the people stayed, and half left, then another half came in for the club. It was quite a strange thing, so you do get your bookie audiences and your clubby audience, and sometimes there's a big kind of Venn diagram, a big fat bit in the middle. Other times there's just a little slither, you never really know.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. We have another question? Maybe from the middle. Are you too shy? Oh, we've got one right at the top of that. I'm just testing you. Oh, right. You just want to go with the one that's close to you. You'll be next. I'm going to make a run up there. Hiya.
I was just thinking to myself, if I've been on the circle any day, Irvine, and I was thinking, am I one of the cast members? I just wondering if there's any things that have happened in your, say when you're in Miami or something, if you're in a restaurant or there's a certain thing that happens, you think, I need to use it in my book. That's sort of, does that inspire any of your stories? And your,
Like real life anecdotes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all the time, but I tend not to carry around, there's a lot of writers I know, they've always got the moleskin in the pocket with the pen, and if they see something, they just, oh yes, this is gold, I'm kind of right. I tend to, I'll recognise it. I don't have a great memory particularly, but I like it just to filter into the subconscious, basically, and I think if it's, it'll come out at some point.
Yeah.
So I trust. I don't know why, because I've got, as I say, I've got no memory at all. So I don't know why I trust my subconscious to kind of store this and then bring it out at a relevant time. But I kind of do. You know what I mean? I think so. I tend to let it filter and come out in its own time.
In its own way?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, we've got a question here. These ones are all too close. I'm going to send you up back. You're next, don't worry.
Thanks. Hey, Irvine, you spoke about writing characters that seem to annoy you personally. In real life, what character do you think that you've written would annoy you most? And also, you're a fan of boxing. Who would you most like to step in the ring with, and why?
Who would I like to step... Well, I'll answer the first one first. Who would I like to step in the ring with? Stephen Hawking, because he's dead and he's in a wheelchair and he's crippled. And I would probably stand a chance of getting some kind of a result against him,
It was actually your...
Although I'd probably have to keep out his way with a measured jab, sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Who annoys you in real life?
The first question was who irritates you, but who of your characters would you fight in the ring?
Who of my characters would I fight in the ring? God, probably Spud, because he wouldn't hit me back. He'd be too nice, basically, to hit me back. I certainly wouldn't get in the ring with Begbie. Or probably Sick Boy. I think I could probably take Sick Boy. It'd be quite satisfying to give him a doing.
Yeah. Would you say? I'm sure I read this, or you might have said this to me. Would you say that, given these four characters that we've been talking about, are they different aspects of you?
I think every character you write is a different aspect of yourself in some ways, because they have to be in a way. And we've all got our kind of little internal family systems, we've got these voices in us that sort of...
It's
and
just
these moods and behaviour. Just me, is it? Oh, sorry, guys. I was projecting a bit there. I apologise. But yeah, I think that it's like when you think of, say, if you're going for an important meeting in town and the train door just slams or the bus just pulls away, and you think, fuck, And I think you just have that moment where you just the rage just comes and it passes, and you think to yourself, well, that was quite a kind of powerful moment for me, but it didn't last. Imagine if that lasted, if that was with you all the time, and you couldn't shake it off, and you were compelled, by that to act through your life in that state of rage. That's where you get to. You've got the basis there for a Begbie character. You think, I can't get away from this. This is trapping me. It's compelling me, and it's the same thing. It's like you look at. We've all been the kind of the cynical kind of intellectual who looks at how who observes people and looks at what they're doing and how they mess up. And if you stay in that mode, then you've kind of got a Renton character, basically. And we've all done stupid things. We've all been made a wrong or stupid or hapless decision and kind of self-flagellated and all that, and we just let it pass, but if you hold on to that, then you've got a Spud character, basically. And that's what I tend to do. I tend to hold on to the emotions that I feel all the time in everyday life, or everybody feels, but they're very, very fleeting, and what you do is you kind of it's a bit like it's a bit like when in the studio with Steve, like when you see him kind of sampling a bass line and kind of stretching it out and all, it's like that's what you're doing with an emotion, basically.
Yeah, expanding it. Yeah. Okay, yes, you're there.
Hello there.
Hiya.
I was quite interested in what you said about whether or not you're writing for an audience. Basically, you're writing for yourself when you first start writing. And also the fact that you have written quite a few books in the vernacular. Now, I'm part of a writing group, and most of my stories seem to be developing into the Dundee vernacular. And the trouble is, when other people are reading my works, and most of them are English, they're saying, I don't understand this, it seems funny. Did you come to a point where that became a question for you?
Not really. I mean, I started off trying to write the first few books in a kind of, the first few kind of drafts of the earlier books in a standard English, because I just thought that's the way you write things, basically. And I found it quite pretentious. The characters weren't coming alive to me. They weren't talking like that. They weren't thinking like that. And I wanted to have the narrative as well as the dialogue in the way that I felt the characters coming to me. So when I kind of basically rewrote Trainspotting in the vernacular. And when I looked at it, I just about shat myself because I didn't understand the word of it itself, And I thought, because it's not, it's purely a visual thing for me. It wasn't even, because I had no audience to read to. But you're not used to seeing words on a page written in that way. It's very kind of shocking and perplexing in a way. And I thought nobody's going to be bothered with this. Nobody's going to read it. Some of my pals might read it, and they might kind of, But I was wrong, and I think that it was a good time because I think people were a lot more adventurous then. And people were more into trying different things, basically. I think now we're quite conformist. Again, I don't want to keep kicking the internet and sort of Instagram culture and influencer culture and all that sort of stuff. But I think it has created a kind of conformity and a kind of conservatism that you see in culture, in publishing. I think we need to get a bit of sort of diversity and expression back again. But it's I think, with the globalization of culture, I think that's very difficult to do,
Yeah.
So it's difficult now. I think it would be hard to get Trainspotting published now.
And do you think that's because it's in the vernacular or because you're a kind of white guy? Because I heard something that people were saying like that would never be published because of who you are.
because you're you and nobody likes you, basically. Yeah.
No, not quite that. Because of who you represent.
Oh, who I represent, yeah. I don't know. Again, it's like you're aware that you're representing a bunch of people from a certain place, a certain socioeconomic group, a certain social milieu, if you like. But you're always really kind of representing yourself in a way when you write something. You sort of, and I think in Scotland there's a massive explosion in writing in Scotland in the sort of the late 80s because it percolated on from the devolution thing and not getting the parliament that people voted for, and there's no political institutions to express their dissent at that. So everybody started writing, everybody got creative, they started writing books and songs and sort of poems and stuff and performing them. But I don't know, I mean, I think that, it's like the idea that if you look at the way culture now is so disposable, the idea that you write or that you make music or you do anything to make money and to be successful and to have a huge audience seems to be kind of on the way out in a way, Or if you do, you have a little, you have a sort of a successful kind of patch, and then you're gone. I mean, I know that new writers now, young writers, you think, you see somebody's written this great book and you think, this is fabulous, like, you know, they're going to be around for ages, they're going to kind of keep doing more stuff, and then you never hear from them again, and, you know, you think, you maybe bump into one of them and you say, you still writing? You go, yeah, my book didn't get accepted, it never kind of sold enough, the publishers weren't really sort of getting behind it, and I think it was a very different time for writers when I started out. I think the fortunate time for people in my era, I feel like, is it was still the analog era, and culture kind of ossified in the analog era.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the top 100 albums of 1990, it's basically the same in 2000, the same in 2010, the same in 2020, you know, and it'll be the same in 2030. You know, you might get Daft Punk or Fatboy Slim or Eminem, and then, but basically it's this, you know, it's the Doors, Pink Floyd, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, you know, Bob Dylan, Neil Young. It's all, you know, the usual suspects, basically.
Yeah. What I would say also is that with the dialogue thing, writing in the vernacular, it's quite often, if you just read it out, you can understand it. Like, obviously, if you read Begbie out, you can kind of hear it anyway. And Ima McBride, she writes in the vernacular. Come on, stick with it.
Yeah, I think it's like it's the same for anybody, whether they're Scottish or English or American or South African, Australian, Canadian, New Zealand. If English is your first language, you're not used to seeing words on the page like that. But as you say, if you read it out,
you can understand it always.
You know, and if people start reading it out loud and they get into it, then I think it takes off from there.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, there was a question there. Hello.
Hello, Irvine. Hello, Miranda.
Hiya.
With your characters from Trainspotting, who you've written about over kind of different eras of their lives and going back and forward, did you ever find that you'd written yourself into a corner, or is it always a kind of liberating thing where you can explore the characters further and have them shed more light on them?
All the time, you know, you start, this is the problem about not doing things sequentially and kind of being a complete fuck up, basically, that you write a character and you think, you know, this character actually died.
Yeah.
But previously, you know, you've been writing, so you have to give the story to somebody else and all that, and you have to find a way to, you know, I think there's mistakes that come out of it. I mean, it's like I just realised that in the book Dead Men's Trousers that I wrote, I think it was published in 2018, that Sick Boy's son should be about 30, but he's only about 20 in it, you know, so he's kind of, so these things happen when you don't sort of write temporally, and you know, I mean, I try my best to iron them out and to keep. I've got a big chart on my wall of what kind of goes on in the sequences. Still fuck it up, like, you know, the thing is, there's always somebody that tells you. You get a letter straight away. How did this happen? You know, it's like, you know, and there's always a small cachet of readers who just think nothing's more fun to them than watching you make a tit of yourself, basically. Which, yeah.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. Yeah, there, I see you. Hello.
Irvine, you were saying you write for an audience of one. When you were writing the book, did you manage to recapture the guy who just finished writing Trainspotting, or is it written for a completely different audience? It's maybe reacting against the internet orthodoxy and cancel culture and what have you. And
no, you can't really. I mean, you can't reference today when you're writing. I mean, I had the advantage because, you know, a lot of the stories and the sort of, you know, they were there, and I have the original books to Skag Boys and Trainspotting to branch on from. But so yeah, you have to be careful not to let the sensibilities of the modern age interfere with it. But because you do that, it becomes almost like it becomes like an attack on kind of modernity in some ways, because it is, you know, as I said before, it is a kind of freer time in a lot of ways, and you know, you don't want to become across like being this old cunt moaning about young cunts. That's the worst thing in the world, like, you know, because they still have better skin than you, basically, like, and they are the bastards, you know, and they always will. But you know, it's like, you know, but you get into that thing that it's so interesting to see that the way people do age different. You know, we're basically just young fuckers with bad skin, basically, like, you know. So we're going back to where we started in adolescence, like, you know. But yeah, but you know, so I think you have to, and you don't want to be like in a way kind of grandstanding that things were so much better when I was young, because they probably weren't in a lot of ways, like, you know. But it actually does feel like a different time. You know, it feels so strange that now you think to yourself, my God, you know, it's like, this is, you know, you think, this is how people live here. How can they do that? And then you're reaching for your phone to check your texts. Like, you know, you think, this is how we all live. This is so strange.
Yeah, it is. Okay, I think oh, look, you're desperate. Oh, no, I can't. Okay, oh, right, fine. You can have two more. Two more here, and then we'll wind it up. You know why you got that? It's because you were really strong with your arms up.
Thank you. Quick question. So you went around a few characters that are kind of parts of yourself. And when you think about them, one that stands out to everybody is Begbie. And he kind of had a very redeeming piece of DMT, right? Like there was a lot of part in him that you didn't really see previously. Do you think that Sick Boy could ever have that redeeming piece somewhere in the future?
Yeah, every time I do a book with one of with these characters in it, I say, I'm never going to do that again. So I've learned not to trust myself. Like, you know, I've learned this is a transient sort of phase.
That you hate them by the end of it.
Yeah, I hate them by the end of it. I don't want to see them ever again. But it's more than possible that I'll come back to them, and more than possible that I'll come back to Sick Boy. Basically just because I have, you know, and it is like that thing that previous form is the best determinant of kind of future behaviour, you know, so I probably will, you know, which is kind of quite a horrible thought just now, like, you know. But
which bit? Where would you do?
This all can be all sorts of bits. I've got all sorts of little sketches and kind of little stories about them, so I could bring, you know, I could literally bring them in at any time, yeah.
Okay, all right. And yes, you.
Hi. Yeah, I was just wondering about whether you can imagine there being a film of this book, and if so, how again, because it's written out of sequence now, how would you reconcile it with the fact that the characters and the actors, we know them so well? Can we imagine another Renton and Sick Boy? And is it makeup? Is it AI? Or do we just have to recast and you have to accept it?
Oh yeah, you have to recast. You know, you sort of you can't really go back. And I think to me, I would love to see. You know, I'd love to see a film or a long-form TV show, kind of, or a remake of, you know, the earlier books as a long-form TV show, and I think it's a great opportunity to give young actors the chance. And it's like, you know, I've seen so many great stage versions of the plays, and I thought, you know, it's like the talent is there. You know, I mean, I think that we're in this horrible impasse in the entertainment industry where people want names. You know, the producers feel kind of shareholders, and you know, they feel happier if there's names cast in it, and you know, they'll unleash money if there's names and all that. You know, it's like it means nothing as well. You know, I think you can, if you look at the golden age of television, the golden age was the original HBO shows of TV, when you had actors that nobody knew, basically, and they kind of became household names. So I think you should give young actors a chance to you know, and there's plenty of young talent out there. When we were auditioning for the Trainspotting musical, we were, you know, just blown away by the amount of talented young actors that were coming forward. You know, so the talent is there, and we should be allowing it to come through. We should be producing and developing TV shows and movies that give young talented actors a chance to show what they can do.
Yeah, definitely. And your musical as well.
And my musical too, which we will do.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm going to wind it up now. I'd like to say thank you for being a fabulous audience. Irvine will, of course, be signing his book out in the foyer, but thank you for being fantastic.
Thank you so much for coming along.
Thank you for Irvine Welsh.